Well, thank you, Father Marcos, for making a little time to speak with me today.
My pleasure.
Today's a busy day. We're getting ready for Vespers and then a big gala tonight for the feast of St. Lazarus.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
So I'm all decked out in my tuxedo, ready to go.
I'm not dressed for tonight yet, but I will be eventually.
Yeah. Well, so first of all, we really want to get to know you and get to know some of our members.
Okay.
And so a lot of folks may know you, see you around. You are the commander of the West here for the Knights of Lazarus. But were you born here in the States?
No, actually, I was born in Havana, Cuba, during the Cuban Missile Crisis. So if you know when that date is, now you know how old I am. So I was born at that time. In fact, it was a very difficult delivery, my mother tells me, because the doctors had all fled the city because of the possible bombing. So I was delivered by a midwife. Anyway, so I grew up in Cuba, came over to the U.S. on October 13th, 1971. And we settled here in Glendale and then next door in Atwater Village.
Wow. And so you really started as an immigrant. Did you speak English when you came? Or?
Not a word. The only word I knew in English was no. And that was it. Which is very funny because in those days, there was no bilingual education. Actually, I'm grateful for that because I learned English very quickly. So it was sink or swim. And nobody in the school spoke Spanish except for one teacher in third grade, Miss Pennington, God bless her. And so she took an interest, and after school every day, she would tutor me in English. And by the end of my first semester, I was winning the spelling bees.
Well, but how did you end up in Glendale? I mean, most people don't end
Right. Well, okay, so in those days, first of all, you have to understand how the Cuban refugees came over here. You had to apply, and then you had to wait for a certain number of years. We applied in 1965, and we're allowed to leave in 71. My dad had to do 5 years of hard labor in the sugarcane camps in Cuba as a punishment for wanting to leave the country. And then you had to be sponsored because you can't be a burden on the government. So we were sponsored by an uncle in Miami and an aunt here. And so our aunt here in LA, she found an apartment for us, and that's how we came to LA.
Wow. 5 years.
Yeah.
Hard labor.
Yeah.
What a price your father had to pay.
It was, plus losing his business, losing property, everything is taken away from you.
Talk about sacrificial love.
Yeah. And I didn't really think about all that when you were a kid, because as a kid, I was inconvenienced, we're leaving our home, we leave our friends, our school. But now, looking back, you think, good Lord, they made a huge sacrifice to leave everything so we would have a better life. And it changed everything.
Did you ever have an opportunity to ever tell your father that once you
I did, when I was in the seminary. Yeah, I did.
Well, that kind of leads me to what led you to your calling as a priest.
It's kind of a funny story. People have asked me that, and they assume that I must have grown up in a very devout Catholic family. That's not the case at all. Because we lived under communism, the churches were closed. We never went to church at all. I was baptized early. I was baptized at 1 week after I was born. So that was still done. But I never went to a church for Mass. I never knew what Mass was until we came to the U.S. And when we moved into our new home in 1972, the next door neighbor, God bless her, she's gone now, but a very nosy neighbor. So she sees my brother and me outside playing. I was 10 at that time. And she comes over and says, "Are you the new neighbors?" And I said, "Yes." And I spoke English by that time. And so she said, "Well, are you Catholic?" And I said, "Yes, we're Catholic." And she said, "Good, you want to go to Mass with me?" I said, "Sure." I didn't know what Mass was, okay? But I said yes. So on Sunday morning, she took the two of us 3 blocks up to Holy Trinity Church, our parish church. And I sat there in the front row and I did what everybody else did. And then afterwards, she asked me, "Do you want to come again next Sunday?" I said, "Sure." So we did this 3 Sundays in a row. And then after the third one, I said to her, "We've been to this show 3 times and nothing changes. It's always the same thing." And she looked and says, "You don't know anything, do you?" And I said, "No, I guess not." So then she taught me catechism. She took out her little Baltimore catechism, and my brother and I instructed us in the catechism.
Wow, that's amazing.
And then we became altar boys, and then eventually joined the parish school. So I entered Catholic school in 8th grade. And that's really when I started to think, I wonder what the priests do all day. Because as far as I was concerned, they work only 1 day a week, on Sunday. And so I started watching. Now I was right next door to the rectory. And I kept seeing that Father was outside, they'd go drive off and do all sorts of different things. So I asked him, what do you do all the time? And he told me, Father Desert, long dead now. And so I started praying about it. And eventually I felt, maybe this is what the Lord wants me to do. But there was a funny incident because that year, I hadn't told anybody. But one of the sisters who taught me in 8th grade, Felician sisters, she asked me, have you ever thought of being a priest? And I said, well, yes, I've considered it. She said, well, I'm going to start praying for you about that. Okay, no more. And then toward, I think it was May of that year, and that was 1977, we had a Passionist priest come to the parish to do a parish mission. Very impressive man, very tall, white hair, with a big black habit of the Passionists. He scared us to death that morning because he preached all about hell to all the school children, mind you. And so I'd never heard it before. But then that night, I had to serve the Mass for him. And I'm in the sacristy vested, and then he comes, he goes straight at me, grabs me by the chest, punches me on the chest, says, when the hell are you going to become a priest? You know you're supposed to be one. And I thought, oh my God, I've never talked to this guy, nothing. I ended up going to confession to him, and he became a confessor later on. He was stationed here in Sierra Madre at Mount Rosa. And we corresponded, and then he died about a year later. And I went, and my pastor asked me, Marcos, do you want to go to the funeral? I said, sure. On the way there, he tells me the story of when he was a kid, and Father Charles had done a mission at his parish, and had punched him in the chest and told him, you're going to be a priest. And now he's a priest 30-something years. Then I go to the funeral, and the chapel is jam-packed full of priests, sisters, and brothers, all of whom trace their vocation to Father Charles.
Wow.
He had this charism or ability to know if somebody had a vocation, and he pointed it out.
Wow.
So,
firmly,
very firmly. Today it wouldn't happen.
No. So wow, that's amazing. Have you ever shared that story?
Oh yeah. I told the kids at school that.
Yeah.
I don't tell them I got punched.
No, not that part. So now you become a priest. Actually, before the priesthood, you had a couple of pretty well-known now Knights of Lazarus seminarian buddies, didn't you?
No. Those years, I knew nothing about this, the St. Lazarus and seminary. It was, my association with St. Lazarus came much later. I was in seminary, with the college seminary, then I left for 5 years, went to the business world, worked as an account executive for an insurance company, and then I went back to the seminary, finished off, and then was ordained in 1994. I found out about the Order of St. Lazarus around 98, I think. I was here at St. Andrews as the associate. And one of my seminary classmates, Father Bob Becerra, who is a priest of Phoenix, he told me about it. He said, I just joined this about a year ago. I think it's a great organization. You should look into it. So I said, sure, send me the information. And then I was interviewed by the commander at that time. And so I found out about it. And then I was invested in Mexico City. We had a meeting there. I think that was 2000, 99 or 2000. I think it's 2000. So I've been a member for 25 years now.
Well, so I understand that you were good buddies with His Excellency Bishop Timothy Fryer and Father Albaca.
Yeah, we were all classmates. Bishop Fryer and I entered the seminary together. In fact, we were in the very first, they used to call it Come and See weekend. Come in and see, like St. Andrews said. And so we became friends. There were only 3 of us in that weekend. We ended up with a class of 47, but that initial weekend was only 3 of us. And so we exchanged numbers, and we stayed in touch that whole summer. And then when we actually entered the seminary, he was one of only 2 others that I knew. And so we became very good friends. We've been friends ever since for over 40 years now. So, and we travel together every year.
Well, so was that the first time you were in the seminary or the second time that you?
The first time. So that's why he was ordained in 1989. I was ordained in 94.
Right.
I would have been ordained in 89, but I left for 5 years.
Because you left and do you think that ended up helping your priesthood?
I think it was a tremendous gift from God. I didn't think so at the time. There were a variety of reasons why I left, but I didn't like leaving, but it ended up, and then the funny thing is I was supposed to leave maybe a year or 2, and it ended up staying out for 5 years because once you enter the business world and you make money and you have a staff, and you have a company car, and you have all these things, You kind of like all that.
Yeah, luxuries and comfort.
Yes, that kind of luxury and comfort were quite appealing. But actually, Bishop Fryer and several of my other classmates kept telling me, when are you going back? You know you're supposed to. So I finally did. And it was good.
Wow.
So.
Wow, that's amazing. I'm learning so much about you. So now back to the Knights of St. Lazarus. What first attracted you to the order? What was it about?
Well, there's a Cuban connection there. When and the priest who brought me in was a Cuban also, and Cuba has a big leprosy hospital that was very close to the town where we lived, and it's the Leprosarium of St. Lazarus. So I grew up my whole life hearing about St. Lazarus, and in fact, there's a big pilgrimage to St. Lazarus in Cuba every year. I remember as a kid, even during communism, they couldn't stop that because of people's devotion. I remember as a kid, looking outside on December 17th, and you'd see all these people from the night before walking, some on their knees, all the way to the shrine of St. Lazarus to make a pilgrimage. So I knew something about St. Lazarus, and when he mentioned it, I thought, well, I want to know about it. And so I had that connection from as a child.
Wow.
And so, and I was intrigued by the history, that the great charitable works that they do. And so I decided, okay, I'll join. And then when I first joined, I was just a lowly member, but eventually I became the chaplain for the West. And then in 2018, I get a call from the Grand Prior telling me, we think that you should be the commander for the West, which was a big surprise because we never had a priest doing that.
Wow.
So that's the first time that happened.
Wow. What are the responsibilities of commander of the West?
Actually, I didn't know what I was getting into because it's a lot of stuff. But a lot of it is getting everybody together, communicating, doing the vetting on new members, arranging for our charitable works, interviewing people, and then arranging for events like tonight. But the great thing is I have a lot of people who help me. So I had a great vice commander who is now surpassing me in seniority. And so he was wonderful the whole time. I have the hospitallers, the almoners, all these people who do different roles, and they help me to do my job.
So now you've been in it for how many years?
25.
So 25 years. What got you started into the order? Now, what keeps you there?
The people. It's a funny thing because over time, we've met so many different people. The beautiful thing about St. Lazarus is it's worldwide, but in the United States, the Grand Prix of America is the entire country plus Mexico. So our meeting every year, Grand Prior meeting, there's in different spots throughout the country. So over the years, I've met a lot of different people and got to many, many places. In meeting these people, you meet very, very good people who, our old Grand Prior Emeritus now, he says, the order is good people doing good things and having a good time at it. And he was right, because we enjoy each other's company, the social things, the charitable works, the religious aspect. So it's kept me in there, and I've become very active in it, obviously, because of the good people.
So explain the word ecumenism. Many folks don't understand that term.
So there's a difference between interreligious dialogue and ecumenical dialogue. Ecumenism refers to the interactions that Catholics have with other Christian religions. Okay, interreligious is the dialogue we have with non-Christian religions. So we've always had ecumenical affairs, but after the Second Vatican Council, there was a great movement to have a closer dialogue with non-Catholic denominations. So, for example, in the order, which we're the only ecumenical order in the church, we have Catholics, majority, but we have Episcopalians, Lutherans, Presbyterians, Baptists, Quakers, all sorts of different.
And you all get along?
And we all get along. And there's certain things we can't do together, like we don't have Mass together.
Sure.
So when it comes to the Mass, Catholics get Mass, Episcopalians have their service and so forth. But the rest of it we all do together because, like tonight, Vespers. So these are Christian prayers that unite all the Christian religions together. So that's another very unique thing. Over the years in the order, I've got to meet many different Episcopalian priests, Lutheran ministers, Presbyterians. So that's been a very beautiful thing as well. Because otherwise, otherwise, we stay in our little bubbles and we don't get to see a lot of other people.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a very enriching thing.
What we're seeing is a big turn for a lot of young people back to tradition.
Mm-hmm.
And this is really one of the things that the order does offer is it's
Yes.
tradition.
It's an interesting thing you mentioned that, because a few years ago, having the traditions and the robes and the ceremonies and all that, some people were saying, maybe we need to let this go because it doesn't appeal to the young people. And they were probably right. The generations, maybe a generation or two ago, the newest generation loves all that stuff. They're actually attracted by it. So we've gone full circle. And we never dropped any of those things. So thank God. We've always maintained all of our traditions. Even the formal attire at our events. Rarely do you see anybody in black tie, or much less white tie and tails. But for us, for the laymen, they wear white tie and tails. For the clergy, we have to wear the full regalia of formal, and which we don't get to use any other time. So it's actually kind of nice.
Yeah. Is there one particular memory, Father, about the order that you just love to think about or remember? Or
one of the things I love every year is the investiture. And almost every year, I have some close friend of mine becoming a member. And I have many, many close friends of mine that are members now. When Bishop Fryer became a member, that was a beautiful thing. Because later on, I got to be the chaplain at his Episcopal ordination.
Wow.
When Father Al became a member, Ryan and Beth, Barbara and Steve Vors, these are people I've known for many, many years. And so it's a very special thing when you see them becoming members, and some of them are now high ranking in the order. And that's also a very special thing. You see the growth and you see the taking on of responsibilities. And it's a wonderful thing.
Well, so you mentioned investiture a few times.
Yeah.
So can you explain what that is and why that's important?
Okay, so the process of becoming a member begins with expressing some sort of interest or accepting an invitation by a member to come to one of our social events or religious events. Then, if they wish to pursue it, the commander interviews the candidate, and then they have a second interview by one of the other officers. Then it goes to the senior officers of the order. They do their vetting. If everything is clear, then they are slated for investiture. Investiture is the formal ceremony by which they pledge loyalty to the order. They reaffirm their Christian dignity. So part of it is professing the Apostles' Creed, which was part of the ceremony. And then they become a member. After a certain number of years, they can become a knight or a dame. At that moment, they're actually dubbed by the Grand Prior or by the Grand Master with a sword of office that says they are now a lady or dame or a knight of the order.
But the investiture is where you're actually handing them their mantle that they will wear, right? And that mantle is much like the biblical mantle.
That's right.
That was
And
passed on.
it's taking on the identity of Christ.
Yeah.
Okay. And our mantles have the cross of St. Lazarus, the green Maltese cross, to signify those are the wounds of Christ. It also goes all the way back to the time of our foundation, over 950 years ago.
Well, I know you're a very busy man. I appreciate you being here with us.
It's my pleasure.
And I look forward to seeing you this evening.
Yes. And I hope whoever sees this, if they have an interest in the order, they will contact one of us and we'll be happy to provide information.